This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
Glad to have you here with us on this episode of the show, Real Talkers. We're going to be getting to something close to home, so to speak, in our neck of the woods. A debate that is, to be quite honest with you, sort of surfaced and resurfaced and continued and then dropped out of the radar and then popped back in over decades across the country, quite frankly, and right now in Alberta, and that is public funds around private schools. In just a second, we're going to talk to a petition organizer that's doing what she can. She's looking to mobilize her fellow Albertans to direct more public funds to public schools, essentially to defund private schools. And attitudes in Alberta, well, they may be a little bit different present day than they have been in past. We're going to dig into that. Plus, all hell breaking loose in Minnesota. Another shooting involving ICE agents. The President of the United States threatening to invoke the Insurrection Act. 6 prosecutors have quit. The U.S. Attorney General has spoken out against that. We'll bring you some of the so-called up-to-the-minute reporting on the ground. A lot of that being done by independent journalists. Kind of a theme lately, hasn't it been? Plus, we'll get to what Real Talkers have to say about that in our live chat powered by Park Power. Let's hit the ground running. This episode is happening with the presenting sponsorship of our friends at Hanson Distillery. This is Edmonton's first distillery, one of Alberta's oldest. You can check them out online at hansondistillery.com. You know, there's a lot of cool things going on with Hanson, and we want to make sure that we're putting that on your radar as frequently as we can. So sometimes I'm telling you about the amazing whiskeys that they're doing. They've got that 5-year aged whiskey that everybody loves. That one every year has a lot of enthusiasm around its release, the Northern Eyes whiskey. And as we told you a short while ago, they've just released Edmonton's first ever 7-year aged whiskey. Hanson's also doing cool stuff on vodka, gin, moonshine, those unique liqueurs that we were telling you about through the holiday season, crafted right here with local Alberta ingredients. And every bottle tells a true story of passion and heritage and hands-on craftsmanship. You can visit Hanson Distillery. Their location, absolutely beautiful, in the capital city on 174th Street, 111th Avenue, just north of Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. You can also find Hanson anywhere you buy fine spirits. And, of course, you can read more about their story online at hansondistillery.com. It's proudly local and always original. It's made right here. In this episode, we're digging into one of the most consequential and contentious education debates in Alberta right now, and that is whether or not public money should continue flowing to private schools. Alberta is one of just a handful of provinces that funds private and independent schools at a significant level. They see more funding in Alberta than they do anywhere else in the country. And about 5% of the entire K-12 education budget, that's hundreds of millions of dollars a year, goes to private or independent schools. Now, supporters, including those who have spoken on the show previously on this show, have argued that funding choice eases pressure on the public system, that it gives families more options. And you can make that compelling argument. But critics have long argued that it diverts resources away from classrooms that are already stretched thin. We've had that issue all over our radar early in this year, of course, due in large part to that teachers' strike. The debate has moved well beyond the staff room, though. A citizen-led initiative called Alberta Funds Public Schools has been approved by Elections Alberta. And if organizers can collect enough signatures by their deadline, they need about 178,000 of them, Albertans could be asked directly, potentially, in a referendum, whether the province should end funding for private schools altogether. Now, whether or not this government has the political will or the desire to do that is an entirely different discussion, and we'll get into that. Here's the interesting thing, though. Polling shows that Albertans, a majority of Albertans even, may support this idea, even as, and we're being real here, awareness of this petition remains relatively low. And that's why this conversation matters. This is something that quite likely is or could impact your family or families that you care about. Our guest today is Alicia Taylor. She's a Calgary high school teacher, and she's the driving force behind this initiative. A classroom educator who says that this isn't about ideology, it's about priorities and equity and what kind of a public education system Alberta wants to fund going forward. Alicia Taylor, our guest today in our feature interview presented by Mercedes-Benz Edmonton West. Alicia, welcome to the show, and thanks for making time for us. When did this go from a discussion in the staff room at your Calgary high school to something that you put your face on, you put your name on it, you've been campaigning? I mean, this is something you put a lot of time into over the past number of months.
Absolutely. Over the last few months, we have been spending a lot of time working on this. It's been basically a full-time job for me over the last few months on top of my actual job. But where the idea came up is when the Forever Canada campaign started and people were campaigning for that. And I saw how people could mobilize around an issue that was important to them. And then learning about how the legislation had changed and it was easier to initiate a petition. So those were kind of the circumstances that led me to starting it out with some of my friends.
Have you ever done stuff like, have you long been someone that's spearheading petitions and leading the drive toward equity and really getting your hands dirty, so to speak?
No, this is new for me. I'm not, I'm a medium political person, I think, not a super political person, but it is an issue that's important to me and to teachers. And so I didn't see the harm in trying.
Yeah, well, of course. No harm in trying anything. The interesting thing about stuff like this, I guess, to state the obvious, is when you stick your neck out there and you put something in front of your fellow citizens, it's up to them on whether they want to take it up and run with it or not. And I'll ask you about, response to your petition and the work that you've been putting in a bit, but I'm curious to learn a little bit more about the perspective you've gleaned, or the observations that you've made through your years in teaching. Was it your experiences in Alberta classrooms ultimately that played the biggest role in mobilizing you here? Like, were you witnessing firsthand either a lack of funding or funding discrepancies? Were you hearing from teachers or even students, maybe parents, that were telling you, that were sort of lamenting the fact that they didn't feel like the programs, the classrooms, the schools were adequately funded?
For sure. I started teaching in public schools in 2009, and at the time, teachers were well paid and classrooms were well funded and supported. And since that time, I've seen a very gradual decline in the conditions in our classrooms and the supports to students and teachers. And so it is deeply concerning. And these were the issues, of course, that came up during the strike. And so I think they're on the forefront of teachers' minds, especially, but also parents and citizens in this province.
How did your conversations with fellow teachers influence this? Like, did you have a bunch of them saying, you got to get this going, you got to get this going?
I mean, before I submitted the paperwork and the fee, I did consult with a number of my colleagues just to get a sense of the wording around the question and also if they thought they could get behind something like this. And there was some enthusiasm for it. Yeah. Lots of enthusiasm for it. I would say initially I had like a core group of just 5 teachers, but of course that's grown over the last few months.
Yeah, so people can check out abfundspublicschools.ca. We'll link to it in the show notes on YouTube and on the podcast, so people can check it out. What's the fee, by the way? It's hard to keep track because I know that things have been changing. What's the fee to launch a citizen-led initiative, a petition like this?
Well, when I applied, it was $500. So, I mean, not a small amount, but
isn't it 25 grand now or something like that?
Yeah, it is. It is 25,000 now. So that is a big barrier, I would say, to your average citizen. So I might argue that this isn't really in the spirit of a citizen-initiated petition anymore, because I think an average citizen is not able to come up with $25,000. I certainly couldn't.
Yeah, if I can just for a brief second insert my opinion into the next question, which is something that talk show hosts will do from time to time. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because this whole idea around the citizen-led petition, you can bring this back to like recall campaigns for MLAs or really anything that puts the power in the hands of the people, that mobilizes the citizenry, that would encourage grassroots democracy, so to speak. A cost barrier of $25,000, you could probably safely say is preposterous for the average person trying to get something like this organized. But at the same time, I have to imagine this is a government's response to these petitions and these citizen actions blowing up in the government's face in a big way. This started with Jason Kenney. It's continued with Danielle Smith. And now you've got, well over a dozen MLAs with recall initiatives aimed at them. And you have to imagine that the government's trying to do something to kind of quell this. What other hurdles or what hurdles, period, have you encountered through the course of this process?
A big hurdle to us for our campaign in comparison to the Forever Canada would definitely be that we're up against weather and the winter months. Lots of businesses are cautious about having petition collectors in their businesses, and I can understand that. So a lot of our canvassers are working outside, and that can be a struggle when the temperatures drop to -20. Some businesses have been more approachable, and we've been working on renting spaces, but we're not in the like big outdoor festivals like my predecessor.
Right. Yeah. They roughly they gleaned about 440,000 signatures, if I remember correctly. It truly was remarkable. You need to get 177,732. I would imagine that when you dream of that number. It probably pops up. But how far along are you? Are you able to tell? I mean, I know you've probably got a lot of canvassers that are holding paper copies here, but as far as you can tell, what are you at?
Yeah, so what has been returned to me in Calgary is just over 50,000. We have a month to go, and lots of our canvassers are waiting till the end to hand their sheets in. And so I'm cautiously optimistic. I know that 50,000 doesn't represent the total number of signatures that have been collected. I'm hoping that it's about twice that, and that we're on track to complete the 177,732.
Are you feeling like real talk? Are you optimistic? Are you disheartened? Are you surprised? Were you expecting more? Like, where are you at?
I think it's going to be really close. I think we're going to be in the neighborhood of the goal number. I did think it would be easier, honestly, to collect the signatures. But as I mentioned before, it is difficult to get to people when we have to be outside and it's winter.
Yeah, I mean, like one thing, just to remind people, and the average person cares about things, but they've also got so much on their mind and so much on their plate, and it's hard to keep track. So we try to remind people of some of the basics. Something like this, like we'll direct people to your website if people are inclined to sign this. Some of our audience members will not be inclined to sign this. We have a letter from JJ that I want to get to a little bit. Some people are pushing back on this. That's great. I think robust debate is good, but we'll remind people they can't sign the petition on your website. Your website can tell people where they can find a copy of the petition to sign, right? But this would be a lot easier if it was an online campaign. It's not. You need pen to paper.
Exactly. Yep. So, that is a misconception that we're trying to kind of combat. You do need to connect with a canvasser and sign in person. The legislation requires that when you sign, your signature is being witnessed, and you're not able to do that online. So our website does enable people to connect with their canvassers. You can search by region and then find one that is close to you or convenient to you. And if you're in an area, a community maybe that doesn't have a canvasser that's posting, you can fill out the form on our website, and we will send a canvasser to you.
Okay, let's put some numbers in front of the audience. So this is pretty interesting. I'll ask you what you made about this Think HQ survey. I'm sure you're familiar with the numbers. This ran Halloween through till the 5th of November, which feels like ancient history. But a few months ago, about 59% of Albertans that were polled said that they would vote to end the practice of allocating public funds to accredited independent or private schools if the question were put to a referendum. So approximately 6 out of 10 said that that's how they would vote. It's a majority. It may be a modest majority, but a majority nonetheless. When undecided respondents are excluded from the survey results, so when you have just the numbers of the folks who know how they feel about this and most likely feel quite strongly about it, that support rises to roughly 69%, or 7 in 10 of the so-called decided voters. But here's one that was interesting as well. Just 28% of those surveyed said that they were aware of the citizen initiative petition. So just 3 out of 10 were aware of it. Another 20% were pretty sure they'd heard something about it, but they weren't quite sure. They couldn't provide any details. About half said that they hadn't heard about it at all. Are you putting out a plea to parents and teachers? Is this you ringing the bell, trying to get people mobilized?
This is definitely that. I mean, I think that an issue where 70% of people would want change through this method by putting it on a referendum ballot, then that's what we got to do. And so, yeah, it is concerning this late in the petition that only about half of people have heard of our petition. And so, yeah, this is definitely us trying to get a little more attention.
The government on this, and I've had a chance to ask, it was months ago when I talked to Premier about this, about private education, but ideologically, you could probably safely state that the province of Alberta has long protected the rights of parents and students that either attend or want their kids to attend private and independent schools. Alberta has long seen value in that. Alberta funds private and independent schools among the top or the top in the entire country. Can you talk to me? I mean, it's one thing to get polling from the public and ask members of the public how they would vote in a referendum. It's a whole other thing. Number one, to get the signatures to trigger it. Number two, to get the government to put it to a referendum, because the government's not obligated to do so and may not even want to touch this with a 10-foot poll based on the political ramifications that it could have for them. How do you work on that side of it? How do you change attitudes or minds on that side of it? Have you been trying?
I mean, absolutely. I think that yeah, the government, it seems to us that are working on this campaign, does have kind of a bias towards independent schools, and we are trying to combat that. Those are not necessarily the conversations our canvassers are having very often when they're out in the public. But I think that the focus right now is getting the signatures, and then I think after that, our focus would be on advocacy for getting this issue brought forward on a ballot. I would like the change made without that, but I'm not super optimistic about that possibility. But yeah, my work will continue after the petition. If we're successful, then I will definitely continue advocating for this issue. And then should it be on a ballot, of course, there's going to be some advocacy work and education around the funding for private schools.
Yeah, so you do some work, right, with the Alberta Teachers Association? Is it a part-time or volunteer role? Can you clarify for us what you do with the ATA?
It's a part-time job. I work half-time with the Calgary Board of Education as a science teacher. And then the other half of my work is actually in a role of district representative for Calgary City for the Alberta Teachers Association. So I split my time between those two roles.
So did you, was it considered to approach this, or are there initiatives either underway or that will roll out that would endeavor to move the needle on this from a different approach, like a policy approach or an advocacy approach, as opposed to the citizen petition? Why the petition, I guess, is what I'm asking you.
Well, Me initiating the petition wasn't in consultation with the Alberta Teachers Association. They obviously support it because it is in line with um, their philosophy or their work. They are trying to advocate for better funding for public schools, and there is a concern around the funding towards independent schools. And so, yeah, so this isn't a direction necessarily of the Alberta Teachers Association, but they are in support of it because it lines up with their mandate.
Critics of this, those that I guess would argue for the status quo in Alberta, for funding to continue for private and independent schools, will argue that this would be, disruptive. And I'm just going to go off the top of my head based on emails we've seen and YouTube comments that we've seen, that it would be disruptive, they say, to thousands of families. They say that it would flood the public system with a whole bunch of new students that it couldn't accommodate. They've argued that the funds, were they to be withdrawn from private and independent schools, would go back to Treasury Board, basically back to the government slush fund. They wouldn't be guaranteed to go back into public education. They've argued, John Jagersma argued with us on this show in past a couple of months ago, that many private and independent charter schools fill a role for students with learning disabilities or unique behavioral challenges, says they're better equipped to address those in the public system. There's a long list of objections, so to speak, in pulling funding from private and independent schools. What would you say to those folks?
I I agree that it's not necessarily a straightforward, there's not going to be a straightforward solution. However, I don't believe that it's going to be as disruptive as some of the independent school proponents suggest, because not everybody that attends a private school is going to now decide to go to public if they don't have those funds. Some may, but not everybody. I also would suggest for the learners with special needs that their needs should be supported in a public school. If our public schools are funded properly, then we should be supporting those students so they don't have to seek out these opportunities where they're having to pay tuition, where their parents are having to drive across the city. These are not sustainable solutions for the average citizen in Alberta. And if we really do value supporting these learners, then we should be looking at ways to support them in their community school or fund these special needs schools publicly.
I found I don't know if it's if it's good or bad for you to stack this up against the Forever Canadian petition. Like you said, different time of year, different issue, etc. One of the things I've noticed online is that, and again, online is not real life, but most times it's real people, is that the Alberta separation or Alberta independence, Alberta sovereignty debate is rarely tranquilo, as they say. It's very rarely chill. People are very rarely in responsible and measured fashion sharing their ideas with one another in a robust exchange of perspectives. It's very divisive. Everybody thinks that everybody else is an idiot. And the list goes on from there. I don't need to list all the insults that we see. What about this one? Like, do you see people in real life on the sidewalks when your canvassers are out, or when you're talking to people about this face to face? Do people have room to consider different outcomes or different approaches? Or are people approaching this in a way that you would describe as positive, or has this been politically polarizing and divisive? Like, what's been your firsthand experience?
Like I said, mostly positive. I would say for canvassers, their experience is generally that people that are interested seek them out and will sign, and people that aren't interested will keep walking. So there's not a lot of those types of interactions in person. I wouldn't say it's never, but the people online that you're describing in terms of the separatist issue, we're seeing those people on our Facebook page as well. Everyone, like you said, assumes everyone else is an idiot. You're absolutely right. That is
Yeah,
what's happening.
no kidding.
Um, Yeah, and I mean, and then if a canvasser is in a place, sometimes there will be people, and I don't know if they fully understand the issue or if they just don't like having canvassers around events, because I think that some businesses, of course, are trying to present as being neutral, and so if you're outside a business, they don't want to associate with yours, even if they agree with it, because. You don't know who's going to come around the next time that's going to ask, and you want to be impartial.
Yeah, no kidding. This is the nuance of these citizen initiatives. So when's your deadline in closing here? I know you got a meeting starting in 3 minutes. When's your deadline, and how do you plan to get to 177 plus by that deadline? It's February, right?
It's February. February 11th is our deadline. So we're working double time. If all of our canvassers got 60 more signatures, we would meet our goals. So that's what we're pushing for. It doesn't sound like a lot. For some it is, for some it's not. So yeah, we're just trying to support our canvassers the best we can, give them opportunities, and just get the word out so that they're not having to work so hard to get to the people that want to sign.
All right, good stuff. I know there's people waiting to talk to you, so we'll cut you loose. Well, thank you for your time, Alicia. Thanks for doing the interview. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. That's Alicia Taylor. She's a Calgary-based high school teacher, and she's the, as we say candidly, she's the straw that stirs the drink with this Alberta Funds Public Schools initiative. Again, abfundspublicschools.ca. I see our live chat is booming on this, and I want to get to what you have to say about it. We have an email as well that I want to read. Yeah, I mean, a lot of you are obviously going to have opinions on this based on your own personal experience. You got kids in school, or you had kids in school. Some of you, this may be a little bit more ideologically driven. Ideology, not necessarily a dirty word, guys. Keep that in mind as well. It's just how you're wired. It's what you prioritize. It's what you believe, in particular on how things should be funded. Meta Modern in our live chat says anybody who supports public funding of private schools needs to explain why the public needs to fund an institution to which they are excluded. That from Meta Modern. Giants for Life reporting that they've already signed the petition, says they signed it at Mount Royal University down in Calgary. Chantel says, you guys got to present all the context here. I'm just reading the comment. I haven't verified the numbers, but Chantel will put our trust and faith in you in good faith. Chantel says 4.5%, 4.6% of the education budget goes towards 7% of the students. Why do we want to defund a system that saves Albertans money? And this has long been the point that's been made by proponents of, or parents at, or teachers, or principals, or advocates for private or independent schools. They say, listen, we're getting 70% of what everybody else is getting here. Fair is fair. We're all paying our property taxes, and we're getting 70% towards our schools. Everybody else is getting 100. That from Chantel. This is all in our live chat powered by Park Power. We're going to get back to this. Keep the comments coming. We'll loop you in a greater degree to this conversation, Real Talkers, in just a second. We mentioned Park Power every single episode and how grateful we are to have them powering our live chat. You know that this is your friendly local utilities provider. And listen, we just want to save you money. Okay, that's this simple. That's why you want to go to parkpower.ca today to check out their rates on electricity, natural gas, and internet. In plain language, you're going to get the same or better service when you take your electricity, natural gas, and internet business to Park Power. You're just going to pay less. This is low rates, awesome service, and profits shared with Alberta charities. That's another reason why we're so proud to partner with them. Plus, there's no cancellation fees, no commitments. You can cancel or change your rate at any time with no exit fees. That's how confident they are you're going to love what you see. If you go to parkpower.ca/realtalk, you can see 2 exclusive promo codes that could save you up to $150 off your first bill if you bundle services. That's internet, electricity, and natural gas at parkpower.ca/Real Talk. We're super excited to see what's coming up at the Citadel Theatre, including Death of a Salesman. Check out citadeltheater.com to get your tickets. I see a couple of their dates have already sold out. This is Arthur Miller's iconic production, Death of a Salesman, a poignant story of a traveling salesman grappling with unfulfilled dreams and strained family bonds, a timeless drama that explores ambition, identity, and the pursuit of success, revealing the fragility of the human spirit and the yearning for validation, a timeless classic that has shaped generations. You can get your tickets today. The show date's January 24th through the 15th of February. Tickets available today at citadeltheater.com. You know, another way you can save money, keep money in your pocket, a common theme on this episode, isn't it, is by going green, by going solar with Solar by Kubi. They've got integrated renewable solutions, and that includes their spot as Western Canada's busiest solar installer. They've just marked 10 years in business, and of course, they've done a ton of work. They're closing in on 7,000 installations. We're talking farms, office buildings, commercial properties, and of course, residential properties as well. You know, there's objections against solar in winter, but they've got a new blog post you can check out. Check out kubi.ca/solar to learn more about that. Major advancements being made in the space. And you've got nothing to lose by reaching out to the team and getting a free solar quote today. Get the ball rolling. That means come spring, when that ice has melted, they'll be up on your roof, and you'll be keeping more money in your pocket with Solar by Kubi. Our friends at Friesen Brothers always have something cool going on at their 16 different Alberta locations. I mentioned my visit to the Hinton location just a few days ago. They blew my minds with fresh sandwiches. Not that I was surprised. I'm impressed at how far $8 gets you at Friesen Brothers. A fresh sandwich on bread baked in-house by their legendary baking crew. Plus, they've got their new pork and apple sausage out for a limited time. Their seriously good sandwiches are featured on their website right now. Check out friesen.com, or you can visit them in store. Friesen Brothers is proudly Alberta-grown and Alberta-owned. And if you don't have plans, beginning of March, we're encouraging you to join us at UCAN Comedy Nights. You know how proud we are to be partnering with UCAN Youth Services, a nonprofit charitable organization that's helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. They do this through a number of different programs, including their Road to Work program, which has amazing success, job placement in the construction and road building industries, and the Verto project. I was just checking out UCAN's Instagram. They've got a big retail blitz going on right now. 18 to 24-year-olds that are having doors open for careers in retail. Well, a big part of funding these programs is their comedy nights. And if you visit their website, ucan.ca, you can get your tickets. They run March 9th through the 11th, March 16th through the 18th. We're going to be there one of those nights. We're picking our night. We're going to get a full table, pack it, and help raise money for an important cause. Encourage you to do the same. It's a wonderful night out with friends. And of course, you can feel good about where the dollars raised are going. Again, UCAN Comedy Nights. You can get your tickets today at ucan.ca. Appreciate the comments coming in on our live chat, powered by Park Power. Chantel says, my family's not wealthy. My kids attend an independent school. These schools get by on way less than public schools. There are very few schools that are wealthy. Chantel making that point. And it's true. There's a lot of independent schools that are not the wealthy schools, right? Nia says, I went to public school. So do my kids, my kiddos. In the context of this initiative, says I support citizen initiatives, but I'd like to see the government of Alberta step up on this. Some of you are asking why Alicia, why our guest this morning, is against choice. She's not here to answer the question. I would imagine she would say she's not against choice. She's probably just against the public funds going to the private school. She probably would argue that you can choose private or independent schools all you want. She just doesn't want to see the funding go to them, right? MZYYC says independent schools support students with very diverse needs, and that takes pressure off publicly funded schools. MA says every taxpayer should be able to designate where they would like their education dollars to go. This is the idea around the dollars following the student, right? That's a big one for proponents of private and independent schools. Deep TV says defund private schools fine. Those that advocate for this like to ride their fair is fair horse. You want to be fair? Goes on to say, then those who put their kids in school should be entitled to sign a covenant with the government to excuse them from the obligation of public school taxes. That would be in the form of property taxes. Interesting point. Jared says this is not about choice. This is about choice for everyone. Private schools have annual fees that immediately remove access for the majority of Albertans. Tracy says, I think folks want some change, but they do want a full recall. This takes action, and folks need to work together to realize that kind of change. Shelley says, private schools are not just for rich families, and if private schools were taken away, then thousands of kids would be sent to public schools, which could make the class sizes bigger. John Jagersma made that same argument with us in his interview a short time ago. Others say if you believe in the fair is fair principle, someone who pays the freight for their kid in private school should not have to pay for someone else's public school education. Ryan in the mix. It's great to see Ryan. If it's the Ryan I think it is, he's just won an election, his first term to serve as a Catholic school trustee in Central Alberta. He says, I'd be curious to hear how she feels about the Catholic system. I don't know, Ryan, if I say it's a whole different debate. It all probably all ties in together, but there have been initiatives in past, not necessarily petitions, at least not prominent ones, but initiatives in the province of Alberta to see the public and Catholic systems amalgamated. I know people have talked about the savings, the administrative costs that could be saved, in some cases the infrastructure costs that could be saved, for example, in Edmonton or Calgary. If the public and Catholic systems were to share a board, were to share some of their facilities, that's an interesting debate. I've got all the time in the world to listen to arguments around that. Man, this live chat's moving fast today. It's tough to keep on top of. Dwarn says, I can see this private school thing making sense if it was fair and accessible to all, but it's not. Private schools in the bigger and smaller cities, you got some different circumstances at play here. Jim says saving taxpayer money is the weakest argument to make this an issue. Michael says, I'd be curious to know what the plan is to accommodate 25,000 new students. I think it'd be more than that, Michael. It says 25,000 new students overnight in public schools if defunding occurs. Where are these classrooms going to be? Tweeting Trucker, thanks for your YouTube channel membership, by the way, says, where can we sign the petition in Calgary? I've got 4 people who are eager to sign. Again, you can just check out the petition online. We'll link to it in the show notes. It's abfundspublicschools.ca if you want to learn more about it. Peter H. Peter, we saw you sign up for a YouTube channel membership. Thanks at the beginning of this episode. We appreciate that. Says accredited schools all meet Alberta education standards, and it makes no sense to remove funding from schools that demonstrate an adherence to a legislated standard. Arustikla, I hope I read that correctly, says, as a mom of 6 who homeschools, she says, who home educates with a board under an independent school, I fully support my tax dollars going towards choice in education. Moxie Girl says, public dollars follow public services. Choice is important, so all student needs can be met. Many kids in early childhood education with special needs and homeschoolers go to independent schools. Some of you are wondering if it's a conflict of interest that Alicia works for the ATA and started this Citizens Initiative petition. Is it a conflict of interest? I don't know. It's been a while since I've chatted with Jason Schilling. We talked a lot, obviously, about education through that teacher's strike. And I don't know, I don't know if the ATA has officially made a comment on this petition or not. I imagine it's something that they would probably stay out of, but I have to suggest that the position of the ATA would be that they would like to see the most or the maximum possible funding go to Alberta's public schools. That's a pretty safe assumption that I would make. If somebody has a point that they can make here or a comment that they could point to from Mr. Schilling or the ATA on this petition, I'd be happy to read it. Jen wonders, what about that UN Declaration of Rights that declares that parents have choice in education, that parent choice in education must be free? Tweeting Trucker goes on to say, by the way, if people want to send their kids to a private school as opposed to public, then they can pay for it. What's wrong with that? Super Chat Ken says, public education is a public benefit. An educated population, regardless of wealth, helps everybody. And that's why everyone, regardless of having kids, pays for it. Says if private schools can filter kids, so to speak, then they shouldn't get equal funding. Pete says the ATA is a union, not a professional organization devoted exclusively to the maintenance of standards. Its bias is clearly evident and at times extreme. I mean, of course, it's the teachers. Bias is another word that's not a dirty word, guys. Just like ideology, bias is not a dirty word. We all have our own bias. Our bias is shaped by our personal and professional experiences and influences how we feel about things, right? Or how we feel about things exposes our bias or is telling about our bias. So if the teachers are biased toward more funding in their classrooms, it might be something similar to any bias that you might encounter that would make your workplace easier or better or more fulfilling or function more smoothly, right? Do we agree on that? MZYYC says the majority of independent schools are funded by families and other capital. The portion received by the Alberta government is only a small portion, and those parents are taxpayers too. Denise says the wealth gap is only getting larger, and those with money will wonder why those that don't have money harbor animosity toward them. Raspberry Dream, great handle, says, what about the teacher's professional code of conduct? Teachers are not supposed to petition or discriminate against students. And this petition is full on attacking 56,000 plus students. Talking about private and independent students. I don't think the petition is attacking the students. I'm not going to buy that. That feels a little too... Sorry, Raspberry Dream. Love the handle. Don't love the take. It feels a little sensational. It's not attacking the students. It's calling into question the most effective or efficient way to fund the schools, right? And I've worn my heart on my sleeve. I've told you guys this. I know a lot of you don't like this. It's fact. I've attended private and public schools. I understand the different perspectives of the parents. I can understand the perspective of parents that pay their property taxes, that choose a private or independent school for their kids, and that want some of the money. I mean, I'm sure they want all the money, but they want some of the money to follow the kids. They want that 70%. There's other provinces, Ontario's one, 0% of the funds go to private and independent schools. They still have a lot of private and independent schools. It's just the tuition's more. They've got to fundraise more. They need more philanthropists behind what they're doing. They need more sponsorship of their theaters and their gymnasiums and their new builds and their buses and their vans. And you see that. Moxie Girl says kids going to independent schools saves money since the pot of money that education tax dollars goes into does not get a withdrawal when kids go to independent schools. It costs for independent schools. Tracy D is thanking Alicia for her work. Ken pointing out that school vouchers have been in UCP AGM policy proposals 3 times in a row, and he says it's only a matter of time before Danielle caves. In other words, the money follows the student. Erica says inclusivity at all costs is one of those policies that had good intentions off the hop, but in practice it doesn't work. And having highly disruptive, challenged students in regular classes shouldn't be allowed. Shouldn't be permitted. We've had this debate on the show before as well, right? The idea around a move away from so-called special ed or classrooms and more integration and inclusion into classrooms in schools as a policy principle and what that teaches kids. But the flip side of it is how it has strained teachers and how it's made more difficult as class sizes increase, as EAs disappear, these education assistants that are less and less prevalent in schools, right? CV says when a group of people who are under no threat of losing their schools are advocating to take away other people's choice, that's wrong. She asks the recurring question here, why is Alicia Taylor against choice for students? I don't get the impression that Alicia Taylor is against choice for students. I get the impression that she's against public funds going to private schools. There's a difference there, right? Christine says, I'm a huge proponent of public funds going to public schools. Papa Bravo says private school funding would be a lot more palatable if public schools were adequately funded and if funding was directed exclusively to nonprofit institutions. Andrew, sharing his family's experience, says in public schools, when my child was ahead in math, the teacher just let them coast instead of challenging them. Monthly updates were generic copy-paste templates, and when I asked for a parent-teacher meeting, I was told there was no concern, even though I had plenty of concerns. Andrew, follow up. Oh, he did. Here it is, just down the line. I got to remind myself sometimes, you guys, that in this live chat, especially in our YouTube live chat, we're seeing your chats, we're seeing your comments from Facebook and X and Instagram and wherever you're watching this, LinkedIn. But on YouTube, of course, you're limited in the number of characters you can type. So if you put a ... or like a 1 of 2 or something, let us know you got more coming. We'll keep an eye out so we can read your comment in its entirety. So Andrew continues, right, after telling us he He had asked for a meeting with the teacher, was told there was no concern. He says, since we switched to private, it's completely different. We're getting weekly personalized updates. We're getting tailored learning plans for each child. And we're getting teachers who are actually focusing on individual growth. I know some teachers are going to tear their hair out when they hear that. They'd love to be able to do that, right, in the public system. Emily G. says charter and private are different. Totally. Charter, private, independent, there's all nuance. They're not all the same. Joel says tuition for independent schools is needed to make up for what the government doesn't spend. Tuition in some cases is modest. In other cases, it's completely out of reach for a lot of families, right? You've got private schools in particular in Calgary, Weber Academy and Strathcona Tweedsmuir would be a good example, as far as I know. I haven't seen the update for 2026, but I believe that parents are paying approximately $30,000 a year per student, which is wild. CV says independent education is important to serve all students in the province. Matthew Yegg says, I oftentimes did not get the support I needed in schools. It was a struggle to make and maintain friendships because most kids couldn't relate or understand. And Matthew gets serious here, very serious. Says in grade 5, I had been developing thoughts of ending my life. That from Matthew. Says in junior high, I was able to access a program for kids like me. It was a lifesaver, but it was in another city. It only accepted 7 or 8 kids each for grades 7, 8, and 9. Says if I couldn't get into that, then Edmonton Academy would be my only option to stay in a school with other kids. And it's because of that program that I could later succeed in regular high school programs and then university. Matthew says if I received the same supports in grades 7 to 12 that I did in 1 to 6, I likely would have either scraped by with grades too poor for post-secondary, or I wouldn't be here to talk about it. That from Matthew. Thank you for pouring out your heart, Matthew. We appreciate that perspective. Christine K. says this petition is not telling the truth about the reality of independent schools. We save taxpayers' money. Many of us are middle-class families. This is a real choice here in Alberta. Greg says just because you live in a wealthy area or have more money doesn't mean your kid deserves better education than a kid in the inner city. Man, real talkers are across the spectrum on this one this morning. John R. says, why would we want to influx an already overloaded public system with thousands more students, many with significant learning support needs? How would we accommodate them, and where would they go? Ms. Katie puts out a question to the private school people. She says to private school families, what are your kids missing out on without government funding? Are your kids in ATCO trailers? Are there 42 kids in classrooms? She's painting a picture of what the reality is in some public schools right now. Andrea says, I'm a former teacher in public and independent schools. The problem isn't just funding, you guys. All the schools actually deal with many of the same issues, including demands from curriculum on teachers and students. Goramut says, just because your kid's in private school doesn't mean you don't fund public schools. Sorry, rich guys. Public schools are for the public good. Dwayne's watching us on Facebook this morning. What's up, Dwayne? Says people don't really understand that private schools didn't exist, then the funding per child would stop and the already crowded schools would get even worse. Now, I know that a lot of you will push back on that and say, I'm not convinced on that. I'm not sure that that's actually the case, right? If private schools were to be defunded, that's the loaded word to use. If they were to lose their funding, that is by definition what it would be. If they were defunded in Alberta, how many families would actually pull their kids out of private or independent schools? How many parents would pull their kids out of the school that they're currently attending and move them into a public school? And how many would just suck it up and take on that extra cost for the family? It would be interesting to see. There's no way of knowing. You could poll private and independent families and ask them what they think they'd have to do, presented with a number. Here's what your updated tuition amount would be. But there would be no way to know unless it would happen. Those of you that don't buy it, those of you that feel that the families would keep their kids in private school, will call this fear-mongering. And those of you that are concerned and convinced that that would be the outcome would have a pretty compelling point to make. Tracy says most of our diploma programs, people don't realize this, that provided disability supports training are no longer even offered. Andrea says, I have 2 sons, one in public, the other in independent, because I get to choose what's best for how my sons, individuals, can learn. And if funding's taken away, I can't afford it, and my son will be the one who loses out. Greg says conservatives love to talk about this meritocracy that we live in, but if some people grow up with huge advantages, then no, we're not living in anything close to that. Jared says, I couldn't agree more with what I'm hearing. If public schools were funded at a reasonable level, nobody would care if there were independent schools getting money. Equal access for all kids. Jared makes an interesting point there, Johnny. It's like when you're talking about where funding dollars go, and when you're talking about where the government is investing billions of dollars in education, you're going to feel more strongly about your conviction, in particular on funding public schools as opposed to private schools, if the public schools that you're seeing are underfunded.
Yeah, of course.
Right? If there's like teachers going to the wall and striking because they haven't had a raise in 10 years and they don't have EAs, or they're having to choose between an EA and a librarian, or if they have 37 or 41 kids in their class, if they're not able to offer the supports they want to offer, then it's more of an issue.
Yeah.
If class sizes were 24 all the way through and teachers were adequately compensated and everybody felt like things were humming along, that this government was taking public education seriously and well funding it, this issue around private and independent schools would just fly under the radar.
I don't know if it would fly under the radar, but that's the only main concern I have with this. I'm not someone who thinks, all specialized or independent schools should be, barred and defunded. But I do think when there's a problem on the other side with kids who go to public school who are just not getting everything they need already, that's when people get upset, right? And this whole debate, I keep seeing people in the chat. And again, I don't have children. I'm not an educator. So I'm not trying to drop some knowledge on anyone. But this fact that people keep saying that independent schools save the taxpayer money, well, that's debated. It's not really fact. Like, we know it reduces the per student government spending, but it doesn't necessarily reduce overall spending. It's not like some, amazing, solution to saving money. And that if we didn't have independent schools, like the public school system would fall apart. I don't think that's true at all. And that seems to be what some people argue. But I mean, I believe specialized schools have a place, especially for kids with learning disabilities or, and I want to say this properly, because I don't believe, I think segregating, and that word is really, I know that's a temperature word, but I think taking kids who are good at sports and really smart and, all these specialized kids and putting them in a school, that's kind of like taking it's taken all the diversity out of, like me. I went to a public school. There were smart kids. There were amazing athletes. There were kids who weren't that great at things. There were people with learning disabilities. There's, you know what I mean? Like that's the way the world is. I think every kid should get a taste of all the flavors before you go out into real life. Right. So that's where I have a problem with it when it's like, and I understand that they're not all wealthy, but I do that's what you think of when you think of private schools, right? You think of the kids with a little more money, the kids who are a little better at sports, the kids who are a little smarter, all being in one place so they can all excel more. And to me, it doesn't sit right with me.
Huh. Yeah. No, I get it. I'll let people know, and we'll link to this in the show notes. It was back on October 22nd. That we talked to John Jagersma, and I thought it was a really good interview. John is what are they?
Not me.
It's AISCA, the Association of Independent Schools and Colleges in Alberta, and I'm showing it on my screen right now. I thought it was a really good interview, and John makes some really compelling points, and he's not this banging on the table, kind of loud mouth. He was very measured. He was taking questions from the audience. He makes very compelling points. I encourage, if you truly, if you're wired to want to defund private and independent schools. Now, listen, I'm not trying to change your mind in either direction. I'm not advocating for anything here, but we do want to hear from the different perspectives. We want to see the different sides of the coin. Hear John out. October 22nd, 2025. You can find it in our podcast archive. You can find it on YouTube. We'll link to it in the show notes here so you can check out that interview. But he does make some interesting points around the families. Let's you and I in plain language, nobody feels sorry for the rich families. But John's not coming on.
I don't think it's nobody feels sorry, but I mean it's.
But we all know families that that's not true. We don't all know families, but some of us know families. there was a certain family that we know, and I was watching on my Instagram over Christmas. I don't want to heap coals on them or anything like that, draw attention to them. But it was just wild because they're sharing about their like Christmas vacation, their family holiday.
Yeah.
And it's like all on like a private jet. Yeah. And then like the
SUV
comes and picks them up and they're staying in this private place, and you're just watching it like, this is just unbelievable. Like flying private. Like my son was asking me, Dad, do you think we'll ever get to fly first class? I was like, I doubt it, buddy. So there's family.
It's not about like screw the rich all the time, although screw the billionaires, I'll say that. But like it's more like every story you've ever taught, every religion, every old story, Christmas Carol, it's all about like when you have more, realizing that and giving back, right? Mm-hmm. Taking the foot off the neck of the other people, helping other people out, realizing that you've had a bit of an easier ride, all of that. So it's not like screw the rich, but it does. Let's get back to the topic at hand. It does feel a little weird when, you've got teachers saying they're not being paid enough and they're understaffed and they're overworked. And then there's money going to private schools from people like you and me. And I don't like screaming, I'm a taxpayer. I hate when people say that. It's like when people say, I'm a Canadian, I'm an Albertan, I'm a taxpayer. Well, to me, like none of those things matter if you're not part of a community. If you're not out there like, and that does.
I don't think I've ever heard you drop the taxpayer line before.
Well, I don't like when people say I pay, like everyone pays taxes. Like, are you special because you pay taxes? And because you pay taxes, should you decide everything for the rest of us? No, we all decide together. It's a community thing, right? And I also don't like when people say I pay taxes, but then they're kind of like, this word segregated. I don't mind if you live in a rural area or you're a private person, but if you're talking about the community and things that are involved in the people out there, and you don't go outside and touch grass, you don't go to any community events, you don't go downtown once in a while, a couple times a year, and see these places you're talking about and see these sides of the city that you're complaining about, or the roads or the bike lanes or whatever you're talking about. To me, it's like, just because you pay taxes doesn't mean you're a part of the community, right? But
Tracy D's got I didn't mean to step on your toes. I'll come back to you in a second. No. Tracy D's got an interesting point in the question around whether or not there's a conflict of interest, which I don't believe there is. People can do whatever they want on their own time. For Alicia, working with the ATA, if anything, the conflict of interest would be if she was advocating for private funding, right, guys? Like she's with the ATA, it actually makes perfect sense that she would be doing this. And if she's not using ATA time and dollars to do it, then who gives a shit, quite frankly. Wendy, welcome to our Real Talker YouTube channel membership. We appreciate you, Wendy. But Tracy D, in all of this on the conflict interest, says, yeah, let's remove even more rights from the teachers. Now they're not allowed to have any opinions anywhere. Ms. KD says choice is just a step toward a voucher system. Voucher system, when they're mentioning that, they're talking about the dollars following the students. Says you can look up the American system to see how that's worked out and who gets left out. Goramut says the threat here that's private is defended is that public would suffer. You know what he says, the public system is being killed right now. Christopher says the ATA thinks that more funding will go to the public system if independent schools are defunded, but that is not the case. I mean, I know that. I mean, we've got background here, and this is from advocates for private and independent schools. It's not a dirty word, by the way, guys. You may not agree with them. You can check out asca.ab.ca if you want to sort of hear from the other side here. And I even hesitate to put it like that. We're not trying to pit families against one another, but this is the other side of the coin. This is the other perspective. The Association of Independent Schools and Colleges of Alberta, aisca.ab.ca. Man, I've never seen our live chat move like this. Has got to be the fastest it's ever moved, Johnny. I don't know how you're moderating this. But
we've got a lot of new voices in here. We've also, people don't know this, but I do every time we have a show like this. There's a lot of educators in our chat.
Yes.
A lot of people connected to education.
Yeah.
And so
they feel
I'm trying to listen to them because they're more informed than we are.
Yeah, absolutely. But the point that Christopher makes around money, going back into the system or whatever, that if there's, dollars that are pulled away from private or independent schools, that they're automatically going to go to public schools. I'm not convinced that that's the case. And I know that others aren't as well. We got a note here from JJ who writes in to talk@ryanjesperson.com. You can send us an email anytime, friends. We do our best to reply to each of them. But just because we haven't replied to yours doesn't mean we haven't received it. We're not considering it. But JJ says one of the things I think is unfair about this campaign, this petition campaign, is that it frames it as being like a pro public schools initiative, but functionally it's really only meant to harm independent schools. Like, our funding comes from general revenue since we can't allocate property taxes to independent schools. So if our funding was removed, it would revert to general revenue for Treasury Board to do with it as they see fit. Since the public system, like independent schools, is funded by formulas based on student count, it would have no impact on improving funding for public schools. That from JJ. Sherry, welcome to our YouTube channel as a member. Thanks for doing that. We appreciate that as well. Jill says, in my opinion, this would be a complete non-issue if the province funded public schools at a reasonable level, even coming near the average of all provinces. And we pointed that out before, and it is a fact, Johnny, and it's a striking one, that Alberta allocates more funding to private and independent schools than anywhere else in the country, and spends the least on per student public funding. It's
another little knife
in the country.
Knife turn there, isn't it?
It is.
And shout out to Peter, Wendy, and Sherry, who also signed up through YouTube memberships today. Go to our homepage and click on join to select a level.
We appreciate that. All kinds of perks, including a shot at tickets to go check out Death of a Salesman at the Citadel Theater. We got 5 pairs of tickets we're going to give away. I kind of told a tiny little white lie unintentionally to everybody yesterday, so I would like to come clean. I stated that the instructions on how to qualify for our Patreon supporters and our YouTube channel members, instructions would be sent out after our most recent episode on how to qualify. And then, my day just ended without me having ticked that box on my to-do list. It's as simple as that, friends.
I'm going to say this. I give you credit because this guy, I don't even want to get started on his email inbox.
Dude.
But I will say, don't give yourself time. Don't give yourself time.
Don't put myself on the clock.
Time-sensitive deadlines.
But I love Real Talkers, and they hold us accountable.
Here. It's busy.
I remember over the holidays, I said I was going to send out an email updating you guys on something, and then, life happens.
Where's the email?
And then I started getting emails from people saying, where's the email? And I was like, oh my gosh. And Johnny's laughing. He's laughing in the background going, why are you putting yourself on the clock?
At least
and the short answer is, if I don't put myself on the clock, I don't get anything done.
At least you can be secure knowing that we're not using AI to communicate with you. Because if we did, you get the email right away.
That's true. We do not use AI in our correspondence. Yeah, if you ever get an email back from me in 10 seconds, it's probably not from me. Dubious. I'm joking. Dubious says, don't read mine today, Jespo. I don't even know what that means, Dubious. Did you send me something? Lorraine wonders, why is the UCP increasing funding to private, rich schools and decreasing public funding? We are the lowest funded schools in the country. So much, she says, for the Alberta advantage. Wendy, a YouTube channel member here on Real Talk, says, I have 3 kids, 2 in public school, 1 in an independent school. The one at the independent school is turned away from public, despite the common myth that the public system accepts everybody. Interesting. East Coast Stoner, meantime, just says, what a great show. This chat just absolutely rocks. I agree with you. Justin says there's and guys, I'll be honest, sometimes on this chat I'm catching up and you're commenting on something I've said and I may not remember it, but Justin says there's only a difference here to people that understand the distinction, Ryan. Is that when I was talking about private and independent and charter? He says it's only evident to people that totally understand the system. Christine says public teachers would love to have the resources of a private school. Super Chat Ken says, of course private schools can give you more services. Public schools have to divert money to EAs and resources for all students, regardless of their ability, regardless of their physical challenges. 80s Fanify says that parent talking about how things improved when they went to private, if properly funded, all students would get that kind of attention. That's why I made that comment when I read it, is I feel like that would be a punch in the gut to a lot of public teachers that would say we would love to do that. It's not like they don't care about the kids. Not even close, right? Man, there's a lot of this. Amazing. Wendy says, when it comes to subsidized funding at independent schools, I do subsidize with my tuition payment. Without the independent school option and the funding, my son would not even have the chance to graduate. SM says, can somebody please explain the distribution of public funds to private versus public versus Catholic? Is there a criteria to follow? Is funding relative to number of students? Catholics essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, I never attended a Catholic school. But Catholic is funded by the same formula as public. Catholic is not treated as private, right? As far as you understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I mean, a Catholic school, a public school, they're essentially the same. They're just different streams. It's just like with healthcare delivery. You've got Covenant Health in the Metro Edmonton region. right? Covenant Health, we take a look at some of the hospitals, some of the Catholic-run hospitals across, as a matter of fact, across the country are under fire. I saw that there was a family in BC right now that's suing because their family member who wanted to access MAID, medical assistance in dying, was moved from a Catholic facility to another facility so she could have her see her wishes. She, wanted sort of her end-of-life care to play out in that fashion. She wanted medical assistance in dying, in plain language, and it would not be provided in that Catholic care facility, in that Catholic hospital. We've seen the same story, same with women's health options, including abortion. And that's long been a contentious issue for a lot of people who believe that there's no justification for Catholic-run facilities and publicly run facilities, and that those should be amalgamated. It feels like maybe an entire episode that we could do. You could talk about education and healthcare and whether or not it makes sense to have two streams, the so-called public and the so-called Catholic. Christine says Ontario's having a ton of issues in their public system, even with no funding of independent schools. Keep in mind, Ontario funds it to zero. Says independent schools are not a real option for many people like it is here in Alberta. Explorer Hollis, I'm going to give you a personal note right now. You emailed me as a YouTube channel member looking for your Real Talk vinyl stickers. I emailed you back asking for your address. You haven't emailed me back, buddy. What gives? If you're a Real Talk YouTube channel member, we want to send you Real Talk vinyl stickers and a pack of Real Talk matches as well for your candles, guys. So send us your address. Hollis says, we all have a duty to socially fund our public institutions. Funding should be enough for a solid baseline experience for everybody. Says you should have to pay the entire amount if you want to go to a private school. Moxie Girl says the rich will always have more options. It's everyday Albertans who are going to send their kids to independent schools at a great sacrifice. Public schools have widely chosen an ideological view that a lot of families just don't align with. Interesting. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people will put their kids into private or independent schools, right? I think it's obvious. For a lot of you, it's going to be smaller class sizes. For a lot of you, it's going to be a school that focuses or give your child a chance to participate more regularly in sport or dance or whatever it is. For a lot of you, there are religious convictions and religious reasons. You want your this is not all private and independent schools, but for some of them, you want your kid to grow up with a faith-based parameters or faith base for that learning. That can get complicated later in life, I'll tell you, as someone who's experienced it. Faith-based science classes can put you a little bit behind the eight ball. That's been my personal experience.
Sounds like an oxymoron.
Well, I mean, I don't want to take big swipes at people of faith, but I will say, if you roll into grade 10 believing that the world was created in 6 days, and many of you do believe that, and I'm not trying to crack on you guys.
Dinosaurs.
But I'm just saying, right? Right?
There's some stuff there.
It's, Jillian says in Britain, I'm going to get some angry emails for that one.
I know. That was my fault.
Hey, guys, I grew up in it. I'm happy to debate it. I understand it. Jillian says in Britain, private school tuition was not subjected to GST. There are taxes there. And then we just lost your comment, Jillian. I apologize. Damn it. MZ says some independent schools actually pay teachers lower than most public boards. People have very blurred realities. MZ, I am not an authority on this, and I could be spreading misinformation, so I want to be careful in what I say. But I will say I know for a fact, and I'm not going to say across the board when it comes to independent and charter and private schools, but I know for a fact that at least a few, the teachers are making considerably less than they do in the public system. I'm not going to name the school, but a family member of mine runs an independent school in a major urban center in Alberta. You're like, well, there's two of them, Jespo. So is it Calgary or Edmonton? I'm not trying to bring heat on my family members, so I'm not going to mention them. And I don't want to shine a light on the teachers at that institution, but I guarantee you they make considerably less. Now, that's probably not the case everywhere. I don't know what teachers make at Strathcona Tweedsmuir or Weber Academy. I have no idea. Hollis goes on to say, by the way, my issue is not private schools in and of themselves. It's the government sabotaging public schools and shitifying, there it is. Was it Premier David Eby that said crapifying? He didn't want to say shitifying.
We also had another guest
who
said the inshitification.
The inshitification.
Yes.
Shitifying the experience to better sell their ideas of privatization, that from Hollis. And we hear that a lot about healthcare as well, in particular in surgeries. Do I see a former high school colleague of mine, Yuval Greenfeld, in the chat here? Yuval, is that you? A football star at Henry Wisewood High School. His brother Eyal, a basketball teammate of mine. Yuval, is this you, pal? First I've heard from you in 20 years. He wonders, would all public school parents be okay with having to complete 8 hours as a volunteer and then also be obligated to fundraise to help their kids' school? Says independent schools do this type of thing to survive. We got somebody like knocking on our door trying to join us here. This episode is, I of course we expected huge public engagement on this, and that's why we're sticking here with our live chat. All hell's breaking loose in Minnesota right now. We can spend some time talking about it,
okay,
or
so
we can just keep going on this. I don't know.
I was going to use a really bad joke about the person knocking on the door and saying, I wish we had flashbangs for outside when it happens. And that
I can't even wrap my mind around
great
what's happening
segue,
there.
but I've got incredible video and photos, and we
got to get to it.
I know this chat.
Let's
is
keep
just
going on this, though.
though.
I know it's humming, right? Like Sherry says, guys. I mean, you're still here with us. We'll stick with this for now. Sherry says private schools have to pay for buildings. They have many other expenses that are not covered, like the public system. It would be fair to let the dollars follow the student. Everybody should have free choice. That from Sherry. Man, I love you guys for this engagement. And I also appreciate, and Johnny, you're moderating the chat. I don't know how you moderate the chat and ensure the audio levels are good and get ready to roll clips and commercial breaks and music beds. This guy's a machine over here. But can we also acknowledge that for the most part, the respectful nature of this debate deserves to be acknowledged? There's a lot of people that are strongly disagreeing with one another in the chat, but they're presenting their opinions in a way that really, I'm not trying to be cheesy here, guys. I'm proud of you guys. I'm proud of this audience. It fills my heart that we can debate this without, smearing one another throughout. Matriarch says public funding for private schools, especially in Alberta, amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars. You guys can look it up. This is something that we need to discuss. Matthew says, guys, I hear you regarding segregation in classrooms, but on the other hand, Matthew says it was a dream for me to be in a program that only had kids that I could relate to and vice versa. Says I needed and wanted to be separated from the regular stream, and I am better for having that chance. Peter says the public school division that I live in has a student-to-teacher ratio of 18-1. What's the problem? Peter, where is that? That's not the norm. 18-1, not even a chance. Dubious says poor people defending private schools is ridiculous. You've been tricked into working against your own interests if you're scraping by to pay private tuition. I want to get to more of these. We'll keep going on this. As long as these comments are coming and as long as new and compelling points are being made, we'll get to this. I will say it's Thursday, guys, and you know what that means. Courtesy of our friends at Play Alberta, every single Thursday, we focus on a big win in the province of Alberta. We focus on something that we can be especially proud of in our home province. That's right. This is Alberta Wins, proudly presented by our friends at Play Alberta. And we told you just a short time ago, Saturday, March 21st is Real Talk Night in the Play Alberta suite at Rogers Place as the Edmonton Oilers host the Tampa Bay Lightning. And you can win 2 tickets to that game by submitting an Alberta Win to talk@ryanjesperson.com. And that's exactly what Cloud 9117 did. Cloud 9117, Johnny, is our first entrant into this contest to go see the Oilers play at Rogers Place. Cloud 9117 wrote into the show and said, I'm not sure if this qualifies as an Alberta Win. The short answer is it absolutely does. Says, but one of, if not the only, registered animal care charity for birds, and most importantly, parrots in Canada, is Meika's Birdhouse. Now, technically, it's called Meika's Safehouse. My understanding of it, you can check out meikasbirdhouse.com, and we'll link to it in the show notes. But Meika's Safehouse is a big part of what they offer at Meika's Birdhouse. Cloud 9117 says this rescue has saved and rehabilitated many, many different parrots, and they've been a pillar in the Edmonton area working closely with animal care and control. Now, there are animal education programs. Their vetting process has ensured that many rehomed parrots have found their forever home. Cloud9117 says, I myself have a number of parrots in my flock that have spent time with this great charity. So, Johnny, I looked through it at meikasbirdhouse.com. They do a ton of work advocating for these remarkable animals, including like parrots and macaws and all kinds. They got pigeons in there. They got all kinds of different birds. They're big on education. And as you heard, the rehabilitation work that they're doing is also major. Now, you can check out Meika's Safehouse if you scroll down on the page. And that's exactly where these birds are receiving the care that they need. And I was looking through this. Some amazing birds available for adoption. You can choose the size, like they have extra small birds, medium, all the way up. Well, of course, I went to extra large birds. I don't know why. Just the way that I'm wired. And look at these guys, like Casper, who's a blue and gold macaw. No, they even point out when they were hatched. So Casper hatched in October of 2003. Like, he's a ripe old age of 22. Still got some good years ahead of him. What about Tegan, the blue and gold macaw? Or Charlie, the Triton cockatoo. You've got more and more and more. Look at Alex. Alex jumped out at me. Alex was hatched in 1997 in their senior years, but as you can see, Alex doesn't have all their feathers, and I don't know. I think that's pretty cute. I'm talking about the bird, not the human there on the left. This is Meika's Safehouse, and as far as we can tell, the only registered animal care charity for birds like parrots in Canada. You can learn more at meikasbirdhouse.com. We'll link to it in the show notes. I love this. There are people that feel so passionately about this important issue that's not all over the public's radar, that they're doing something about it, making Alberta proud. And Cloud9117, that is absolutely an Alberta win. Thank you for sharing that with us. Hey, Real Talkers, now it's over to you. Who's making an impact in your community? Who's sticking their neck out there or taking a risk? Who is achieving something great, putting Alberta on the map or making us proud? Send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com, and you too could be entered to win tickets for two to join us in the Play Alberta Suite at Real Talk Night, March 21st, as the Oilers host the Tampa Bay Lightning. You know that there are literally hundreds of popular casino games to choose from at playalberta.ca, and there are winners every single day. You can also check out the Play Alberta app for more revenue that stays right here in the province of Alberta. You can download that app today to get started with casino, sports, and lottery all in one app. A reminder, you must be 18 or over to play, and when you gamble, please do use your game sense. Johnny waits all week for that country hook, and I love it. We're going to go back into our live chat here, powered by Park Power, because it still has not slowed down. And MZYYC says the real issue on class sizes, classroom complexities, is a mass influx of students, and that's something that we need to be talking about. 82% of independent school parents have a household income at or below the provincial average of $95,000. This is not just rich families. Jill says, honest question. If private schools support special needs so much, tell me the name of a private school in Edmonton that can take my two kids with autism. She says, I haven't found one. That from Jill. Jill says, why private schools are opposed to becoming part of the public system and 100% funded is because they're able to reject students, which public schools are unable to do. Chantel says part of supporting diversity is letting people choose the education that works best for their religion and culture. MA says if I want private healthcare, I can go find it. Pulling funds from the public system to support private is out of the question. Tracy D says, based on that earlier comment, being turned away from a public school is a very, very complicated issue. It's not as simple as I was turned away makes it stand. John R. wonders how many millions does the ATA, the Alberta Teachers Association, stand to gain in teacher dues by moving thousands of independent teachers to the ATA? Something tells me that's not what this is all about. My guess is that that's not what this is all about. Raspberry Dreams Back says Alberta has supported a pluralistic education system since inception, since year one, since 1905. It is the most inclusive thing that Alberta can do. Raspberry Dream says, I support public, charter, Catholic, Francophone, independent, and homeschooling. Bendu says, if the public system was robust, people would have stayed there. There's a gap, and concerned community members who start schools to meet those needs are now being targeted by the failed system. Moxie Girl says, if you think independent schools are overflowing with resources all the time, you don't know much about independent schools. Many are working on very tight budgets as well. Visit one. Moxie Girl, I can say that is definitely the case with the independent school that my family member is in charge of running. CV says most modern democratic societies have a pluralistic education system where the government funds both public and private education because it provides better academic and civic outcomes. Labendane says private and charter schools also do not have to follow the rigid scrutiny that public schools are subjected to. They have a completely different set of rules to follow. This is the conversation is not slowing here, and I think that's a good thing. This is also a good reminder, I guess, Johnny, that we do have our Real Talk community chat that runs 24/7 on Discord. And if you are a member of our Patreon, or if you support us with a YouTube channel membership, you have access to that Discord. We drop in as often as we can, and it's amazing to see these conversations pretty much as soon as every live stream wraps. They continue in the Discord. So that's another way for you to get involved and further connect with your fellow Real Talkers. I'm also noticing, I saw a note here. This has nothing to do with anything. I saw a note here, and I made a note earlier in the show. There was one of you had shared in the live chat that your walk to work had been very interesting today as you stepped out and immediately encountered unexpected ice on your commute and biffed and bailed. As I'm referencing, I don't know if you noticed this for the podcast, but as I'm referencing our live chat, you can see I've got a pretty hefty scrape. It's like 2/3 of my palm is split wide open, and I've been trying to stop the bleeding all morning, and I can't stop it. Jeez! I was the guy in those, like, it used to be, like, you know, back in the day. Remember back in the day, America's Funniest Home Videos, and now it's just TikTok, basically. It's YouTube Shorts. Yeah. I was the guy that stepped out today, like, whistling and happy, and I'm off to see on my way to work. Yeah. No, I think hi-ho, it's off to work I go would have been a better cultural reference. Yeah. And I take a step outside of our front steps, and first step on the sidewalk, just ate it.
Biffed it?
Work bag, coffee.
Biffed it?
Just biffed it,
just
bud.
Biffed it, bro.
Just biffed it, bro.
But
I haven't been able to stop the bleeding this entire episode, so those of you that see it,
I can see you doing this. There's a perfect meme of, you've probably seen it. It's Leonardo DiCaprio, like, skipping down the road, and he's so happy. And there's always, like, people always tag it with the funniest stuff. I saw one yesterday that was, like, me when my life is falling apart, and then I look at the microwave and it says 11:11, and then you're just woo.
Or 12:34. Yeah. That's another big one for me.
But I was gonna say today was it's getting better with the ice because we're having like a little like mini spring here. Are we not this week? It's like 6 degrees outside.
It kind of feels like it.
But then today I think it's the wind combined. Like I heard a lot of people. I mean, I walked here to work from a few blocks away, and it was those patches of ice along with the wind and the chilliness and everything. If you're walking your dog this morning, I feel for you.
Well, you know that people are gonna think that we're trying to be cute, and this is a segue to talk about ice in Minnesota, and it's not.
No,
because there's nothing funny.
Or the mayor, it's funny because Andrew, I've seen like 3 posts from him talking about snow removal in the last
it's a tough look
8
for the
days. So.
Tough look for the new mayor of Edmonton.
He's trying to address it.
No word of a lie, on my grandparents' graves, helped push 3 vehicles just yesterday.
Yeah.
Just me on just our street in front of our house. 3 different vehicles popped out and trying to help our fellow humans. Obviously, some of you, by the way, are driving vehicles that you have no business driving in a Canadian winter. I don't know what the hell some of you were thinking with the vehicles you're driving out there, but I digress. I digress. You do have minimum expectations on what road maintenance will look like. And we have a new mayor right now that is encountering the biggest snowfall that one of Canada's snowiest cities has seen in a long time. Calgary, I know you're the same way right now. And it's a debacle.
I do understand that, like, it happened right at Christmas where, like, you know, those 48 hours, a lot of people take time off, but like a lot of those independent snowplowers do not. That's when they make bank. They don't care that they're working on Christmas or Boxing Day or whatever. And I do also realize that, like, it was a bunch at once, but like, I will say this, and I'm not trying to pile on the new mayor or anyone who's doing snow removal right now, but I can't remember in the last 5 years when it's been this bad on the south side, downtown, like areas where, like, yeah, sure, have a winterized vehicle, but like if you're in a community that's busy and then going downtown to work, those roads should be clear.
100%. I can't help myself. I'm jumping back into the live chat before we talk Minnesota because the conversation is continuing. And if there's anything I know
we might have to
as a
hold it
talk
till
show
tomorrow.
host, well, we can play a few, or I guess we can just go as long as we want. But I mean, I would just say one of the things for me is that when this audience, an engaged audience, in particular, new and fresh voices in our live chat, nothing against our regulars. We love our regulars, but this is drawing people in to this conversation. I want to make sure that we continue that conversation. If nothing, like if Real Talk can't be a public forum, if Real Talk can't be a place to put issues in front of the public and have it respectfully debated and moderated, then what are we even doing here? Tigi6 says, one of the reasons I support public schools is because it forces wealthier citizens to be more invested in their own communities, and it promotes social cohesion. Cassandra says the idea that public school parents don't have to volunteer or fundraise is pure ignorance. And what actually goes on in public schools says there's probably more of that at public schools than there is at private. RS, we're going to get in trouble for this one, RS, says I went to public school, but my friends who went to Catholic school drank more, smoked more dope, and caused more trouble. So much for the fear of God. Not from RS. I think if you're allowed to just go in and confess it once a week, you can kind of do whatever you want. Isn't that true? Nah, our Catholic friends, I'm trying to be cute, guys. I'm just trying to be cute. Faith over fear in our chat says, I'm willing to have an open debate with anybody. And conservatives are not bad people.
I don't think anyone's saying that.
Some people may have. A lot of other people think, I mean, listen, people are going to, you know, and I don't want to say people writ large, people generally speaking, but a lot of folks will think that like all lefties are communists or all right wingers or fascists or whatever. And we're kind of like writing off big groups of people. One of the things I think that we can do on this show is put people in front of this audience. We encounter people in our everyday life that feel differently about things, and you see a humanity in them, and you seek to understand where they're coming from. And I think we're all, as Gord Downey would say, richer for having heard that. Dude, I can find a way to integrate Gord Downey. The hip did bring everybody together.
I know they did, but it's like
Ryan says people are removing their kids from public schools, enrolling them in Catholic schools. They have split classes in public now for a couple of different grades. Says Edmonton Catholic is seeing the exact same thing. Peter says, I encourage everybody to check out the number of teachers that their publicly funded school division employs and the total number of students. You know what would be great, Peter, is if the provincial government would commit to class size surveys and release the data. That would be great. And then a whole bunch of you just quoting Dumb and Dumber. I love that. Based on our Alberta Wins. Pretty bird, pretty bird. I wonder if we'll inspire some parrot adoptions. Thanks to this edition of Alberta Wins. There's no really like smooth way to transition into this, except for I think that this is just like how real people are talking about what's happening in Minnesota, and that is that it's absolutely bonkers right now. There's been another shooting. Thankfully, at least at this point, it doesn't sound like a fatal shooting, but tensions are continuing as we speak in Minneapolis, Minnesota, as protesters are clashing in the streets with law enforcement, with ICE agents, following a second shooting in about a week involving ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The Department of Homeland Security has confirmed that they're calling them federal law enforcement officers. I guess probably by definition they are, even though they're being hired with like minimum standards, given $50,000 signing bonuses, being pushed out with little to no training. But these ICE enforcement agents have shot a person, they say, who fled a traffic stop. The shooting, of course, on the heels of the fatal shooting of Renee Good. Everybody knows her name now. Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old mother. That was on January 7th. And obviously, there are different accounts of what led to that. There's the common sense account, if you ask me, and then the other ones. But we're seeing some pretty remarkable stuff out there. including this one, Johnny. There's a dad. This is that clip I passed. This is a dad who is in a vehicle with 6 kids, and the vehicle, they're calling it like a smoke grenade, like basically like a flash bomb, was thrown into the vehicle with 6 kids. And the dad, there's a lot of incredible reporting that's happening on the ground here, including independent reporting and independent journalism, in particular from a group called The Coup. You're going to hear a couple of their interviews here in just a quick second. But can you wrap your mind around like what this dad is experiencing right now? Here he is in his own words.
Officers threw flashbangs and tear gas in my car and made I got 6 kids in the car. But my 6-month-old can't even breathe. My 2-year-old then flipped out the damn car. This was flipped over. My car filled with tear gas. I'm trying to pull my kid out the car. I'm telling the officer I need ambulance. It took him 5 fucking minutes. He's going back and forth with me, telling me to go back in there and call and tell them to come up Lindale. They can't even come up Lindale.
Were you participating in the protest?
I wasn't at all. I didn't care to be, not to say it like that, but I wasn't. Like,
You were just here.
Yes.
You saw them and you were trying
Yes, I was trying to leave.
I was trying to leave, he says. I mean, look at this video that was shot on the ground. This is from that Status Coup group. I mean, for those of you listening on the podcast, these are like flashbangs, tear gas, citizens clashing with law enforcement. An independent journalist on the scene claims to be hit in the head by one of those, what do you call them, like smoke grenades, flash grenades, whatever you want to call them. I don't have a lot of experience in rioting or demonstrating to the point where it's gotten to this.
Well, there's some that just flash, there's some that smoke, there's some that do both. I don't think these are like, I don't think these are like chemicals or anything. These are just
the tear gas ones and then the
noisemakers.
noisemakers.
Deter people and kind of, it causes this like, I don't know. I don't like these flashbangs. And it almost causes more chaos. Every time I watch a video like this, I'm like, people can't see. People start running into each other. People start shooting in the dark. It's a crazy situation right now in Minneapolis. In the last 48 hours, it became this. And now it looks like, I mean, it's hard to not think that, the president maybe has an ulterior motive here, like Supriya was talking about, where, if this is bad enough where if he said martial law tomorrow in Minneapolis, I don't think anyone would bat an eye because it looks like that. It looks like you need it.
The president's musing about invoking the Insurrection Act, and we can talk. And of course, I think a lot of people are doing their best to learn a little bit more about what that means. There's a bit of video that's making the rounds here. I don't even know this guy's name, this citizen in Minneapolis, the guy in the puffy jacket. Johnny, it's the first clip I passed along to you. This guy, this is not, what do I say here? I guess this is me saying earmuffs, kids, because this guy's language is pretty salty. But I think he speaks for average citizens here. And this guy grants this interview, and he basically says, as you're going to hear from him, he's not like a normal he's not an average protester. He's not a shit disturber. Like, this is just kind of your average guy that's out there because he can't believe what he's seeing on the streets of America. He can't believe what he's seeing in Minneapolis and across the state and across the country. And it's salty language, but it's really compelling stuff. This is kind of who you might refer to as like the everyman. Check it out.
This is nuts. This is fucking, and you're right in the middle of this shit. What the fuck is going on? Dude, this is insane.
Have you ever gone out to these sort of things before?
Never. I've never protested in my life. My brother's here. He does it all the time. I've never. Yeah. Like I said, I'm far enough away, but close enough, and I sit in my cushy house and look at shit and get mad, and they're just trying to fucking scare people, and but why shoot people? You know what really pisses me off is the fact that they detain people, cuff them, and then still beat the shit out of them. They tell you it's immigrants, only immigrants. It's fucking anybody. I have friends that got detained, and all they were doing was fucking driving home from work. What the fuck?
Sounds like you don't fit the definition of the...
No, I'm not fucking paid to be here like everybody fucking says. What the fuck is that? I gotta work in the goddamn morning, just like everybody else. I'm just here trying to stand up for community, dude. We're all human beings here. I don't give a shit who you are, where you came from, what color you are. It doesn't fucking matter. This is wrong.
It's a guy that's all fired up about what he's seeing in his community. So, Governor Tim Walz has actually been speaking out on this. Now, keep in mind, he said that he was going to be mobilizing Minnesota's National Guard. He had joined Minneapolis Mayor Fry in inviting ICE to leave Minnesota. He had called out Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, and the President of the United States, said, we don't need your help anymore. And now Governor Walz has issued a statement, as this has continued. I mean, this has been going on now for at least a couple of weeks in Minnesota. And so here's what that state's governor has to say. This just a very short time ago.
What's happening in Minnesota right now defies belief. News reports simply don't do justice to the level of chaos and disruption and trauma the federal government is raining down upon our communities. They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And at grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our schools, they're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government. This week, what's happening in Minnesota right now defies belief.
Okay, so that's the governor of Minnesota. That's Governor
Instead,
Walz.
It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government.
That an appearance
this
on
week,
MS
he went
Now.
online.
That's Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz in a conversation. It was on the briefing with Jen Psaki on MS Now. Tim Walz. So there are implications, obviously, for members of the public. You heard that guy all fired up, the WTF guy, right? You heard the father who had 6 kids in a vehicle that was hit with tear gas, right? And then you've got about it's I've seen the number reported as 6. Continuing to look for confirmation on that, but as of right now, 6 prosecutors, 6, that's a lot, in Minnesota have resigned, have left their jobs amid this turmoil. And all of this centers around the resignations based on the statements that have been issued and based on what's known at this point, the fact that the feds are investigating the death of Renee Good, the killing of that mother. Feels weird to point it out, but I do think it's relevant to point out a U.S. citizen, not suggesting that the shooting, the killing would have been justified if she wasn't, but a U.S. citizen. The feds are investigating that and freezing out Minnesota. They're freezing out the state. The Trump administration is blocking the state of Minnesota out of the investigation into the shooting of Renee Good, of course, who was fatally shot in the head by an ICE agent last week on the 7th. Now, several supervisors in the criminal section of the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division have also given notice of their departures. And so you're losing federal prosecutors in Minnesota that basically want nothing to do with the approach that the Trump administration is taking here. The position of the Justice Department is that it doesn't believe that there is currently any basis to open a criminal civil rights investigation into Renee Good's killing. And this has been a sharp departure from past administrations, which anytime there has been a shooting of a civilian by a law enforcement official, there have been prompt and swift probes, investigations into potential civil rights offenses. And that is not the case here. Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, was asked about this in a recent interview on the heels of these resignations of 6 federal prosecutors. And you need to hear this. Here's what the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi had to say about it.
Yeah. Sean, we support Secretary Noem. We support our men and women of Homeland Security and ICE who are out there taking predators off the street every day around the country, and they're doing it in Minnesota. What happened in Minnesota? We had 6 prosecutors who suddenly decided they didn't want to support the men and women in ICE. One of them was busy doing a photo shoot with the New York Times while ICE was out there risking their lives. So they came, they said, we want to resign, but we want to use our annual leave leave up until April, meaning they wanted the taxpayers to pay for them to go on vacation because they decided they didn't want to support law enforcement. So the breaking news tonight, I fired them all. They're fired from the office. And our U.S. attorney there, Rosen, he's great. He was just confirmed 3 months ago. So he has his hands full. And that's what we're facing around the country, the deep state, in many of these offices. And we learned these people had been out there interviewing at liberal law firms prior to this. But I'll tell you what, from a personnel level, they'd be an HR nightmare. So people better look into them. One of them, actually, in 2022, defended BLM when they burned down a pawn shop and someone was murdered. Yeah, they want to be part of the resistance. Yeah, bring it on. They're not going to be working for Donald Trump and the Department of Justice any longer. But that's what we're up against, not only in Minnesota, but around this country.
That's almost impossible to comprehend, but nothing surprises me anymore. All right, Attorney General Pam. Yeah, go ahead.
And Sean, also, we had our great men and women in the U.S. Attorney's Office in California, in Eastern Michigan say, we'll come in, we'll prosecute those cases. So get ready. Good riddance to the 6 that are gone. Our great other prosecutors from around the country are coming in to protect the men and women of ICE.
All right, Attorney General.
That's pretty wild. That interview, Sean Hannity on Fox interviewing U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi. Liberals, BLM, the resistance. I get it if it's 1 or maybe 2. When 6 federal prosecutors resign and your position on it or your take on it is just that every apple is bad and has been bad for a long time and basically fuck them if they're going to go try to find other work. Wild. She did spell it out. And the one thing that she said that was probably 100% accurate is that none of those federal prosecutors want to back ICE right now. And that's probably about the safest position that you could take. I mean, ICE has its supporters, right? There's supporters of the action that are in our chat right now. For example, Highway to Heaven says if they would have just left ICE alone, ICE would have been out of Minnesota by now. That's just the kind of attitude that if everybody just looks away and lets it happen, right? This will all be over soon. Just let it happen. It'll all be over soon. We've heard that before. You often hear that in court testimony. I don't blame people for getting all fired up. I don't blame Puffy Jacket guy for stepping out of his house. What did he say? He says, I watch TV, I get angry, I get pissed off, whatever. Something is drawing. Something's happening here. It's mobilizing more people. And it's obviously getting out of control in Minnesota. Leslie says, that guy, that citizen there, he definitely speaks for how I think a lot of us, or even all of us, are feeling about the madness of this government. Ambustion says, this is incompetent fools at work, and they are not ready for what they are trying to incite. RS says, heavily armed masked men in camouflage storming a city, and some are wondering why this is problematic. Ms. Katie says, never forget, George Floyd was also in Minnesota. Ms. Katie, George Floyd was like blocks away from where Renee Good was killed. Says people in Minnesota are pretty traumatized. They're pretty jaded about law enforcement to start with, and then now you've got this. You can share your thoughts on this to talk at ryanjesperson.com. Ken says it is wild to still see Trump supporters in Canada after everything that he's trying to do to their Canadian family, their neighbors, their economy. It just shows the power of a social media addiction. Jay Draw says weak men make hard times, and those ICE agents are the weak men who bring hard times. JL says, yeah, you can't quit, I fire you, right? You can't quit, I fire you. Well, you can't fire me, I quit. A lot of you were saying it's just insane how poorly all of this is polling. This is only going to backfire. Meta Modern says, I had a guy at my bar last night claim he was an ICE agent on vacation. I don't know if I should read the next part, Meta Modern. It would probably count as inciting violence, but we'll note that you felt very strongly about what you wanted to do as a physical expression of your emotional response. How's that? I don't know how you wrap your mind around this. I don't know where this goes from here. You see that party at the White House with everybody wearing or was it at Mar-a-Lago with everybody wearing the dog masks? Did you see this? I don't know how to wrap my mind around it. I saw some people talking about it in the chat, but it's just crazy. It's kind of the idea. People are saying that this is like the let them eat cake thing. This is a strange party at Mar-a-Lago at a party this weekend. Johnny, you can show my screen, so check this out. This is I don't even know what this is. Somebody just sent this into the show and said, "Did you see this?" This is apparently a party at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. It's it looks like the Palace at Versailles with people dressed up like they would party in not everybody, but the elites, the 1%, back in the days of Marie Antoinette. And this party at Mar-a-Lago with folks wearing dog masks. They've got to be entertainers. They've got to be hired entertainers. They can't be party guests. I don't know what the hell we're looking at here. You can check out the account Patriot Takes for more on the video. Approach that account at your discretion. So let them eat cake. As Canadians, the question is, how do you respond to this and what do you do about it? Is this influencing how you feel about the 51st state rhetoric? Is it lighting a fire under you that wasn't previously lit? Is it changing your mind on conversations around Alberta independence? I'll know one thing for me, and I'll say this as a fact. The more that I see about what's happening in the United States and just the interpretation of facts, the lying that we're hearing from Kristi Noem and J.D. Vance and Donald Trump about the Renee Good murder and about everything else, just reiterates what everybody already knew. We haven't even talked about the auto worker that called Donald Trump a pedophile protector, drawing a fuck you from the president, the sitting president of the United States, and probably one of the most iconic photos ever taken of any president. There'll be a photo that'll be in history lessons down the line of the president extending the bird, extending the middle finger to an auto worker that yelled during a manufacturing plant. I think it was a Ford plant tour. Called him a pedophile protector, and Trump says, fuck you twice, gives him the finger. Did you see that auto worker was suspended without pay? And there's now a GoFundMe that has raised more than $750,000 for him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on right now, and as Canadians, and in particular as Albertans, I don't know about you, but when I see Albertans who are unelected, unappointed, and unauthorized to be speaking on behalf of the province, claiming to be meeting with U.S. administration, from the officials from the U.S. State Department, negotiating terms of Alberta leaving Canada to the benefit of the United States, at this moment in time, that fires me up more than ever before. I've always been somebody that feels that Canada is stronger with Alberta in it, and Alberta is stronger in Canada, and have been willing to speak out on that and campaign for that and fight for that in the sense of using this platform and using my voice and mobilizing this audience to really consider what's at play, to really consider what's at stake, to really process and think critically about what we're talking about. But as you see what this Trump administration is rolling out, in particular in blue states, as you see how it is turning law enforcement, these ICE agents, onto its own people, tear gas into vehicles with babies, pregnant women being hauled away, an innocent mom shot in the head and killed. And then I look at Albertans that are down there to cooperate with this administration and pull Alberta out of Canada and introduce it to that mess. That has me more fired up about this than I've ever been in my life. And I can't see anything changing on that front anytime soon. We always want to know where you're at on this. You can leave a comment on our YouTube episode. You can send us an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Of course, the next episode of the show, that's going to be the 16th of January. It will be a Friday. That means that our friends at the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park will present the Flamethrower. These are your hottest takes. This is a chance for you to have your voice heard on what is consistently our most downloaded podcast of the week. The Flamethrower goes out as a special episode, typically 5-6 minutes on Saturdays. You can subscribe to Real Talk wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the like. The Flamethrower proudly presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. We also want to give a shout out to our friends at California Closets who just do an unbelievable job backing this show, and we're so proud to partner with them as well. California Closets of Canada has long been a Canadian-owned and Canadian-operating company that manufactures everything that they install proudly right here in our province of Alberta. That means they control the quality of it. They know the source of where all their materials are coming from. And, of course, that's why they can guarantee everything they install for the life of your home. You can learn more by requesting a free consultation today. Check out what they can do with custom closets, storage systems. For us, it was the entertainment center where our whole family gathers. Of course, nobody does walk-in closets like California Closets. And one day, I'm dreaming, Real Talkers, one day I'm going to get them to do a custom garage for me. I mean, that is just next level. California Closets can custom design installations to fit your space and your budget. You can learn more about that, including Level 1, practical simplicity, more cost efficient, all the way up to luxury refined. That's when they can showcase everything they can do, including lighting. They do fireplaces, just incredible stuff. Learn more by checking out californiaclosets.ca. Hey, for those of you that are running businesses, those of you that are looking ahead to your retirement, you want to make sure that your family is well set up for the future. You know, a lot of you are probably going to be asking, as the Canadian stock market returns just under 32% last year, whether or not your Canadian mutual funds outperformed that return. And if it didn't, if your mutual fund is not keeping up with the benchmark, why not just own the benchmark? Well, North Road Investment Council has their best on this file, building customized passive portfolios designed to capture index returns, but they've got a really strong focus on tax management and matching your values and your preferences. And that means for families and institutions that need to exclude certain companies that you may be connected to as an executive, or you want to avoid investing in certain industries, maybe you don't want to invest in tobacco as an example, you can design your holdings for greater tax efficiencies. Families and institutions with around $2 million or more to invest can see fully customized factor portfolios in Canada and the U.S., all within a globally diversified investment strategy. Nobody does it like North Road Investment Council. And for those of you that are maybe at an earlier stage of building your wealth, the team at North Road can also work with you on an hourly basis. That means that you can have a professional review your current investment strategy and your insurance needs and develop a customized financial plan. You can learn more by reaching out to Marshall, Carey, and the team today at northroadic.com. And I also wanted to just give a big shout out to those of you that are doing things like estate planning. You are doing your wealth planning. You're the one maybe in charge of your family or maybe in collaboration with another family member on planning where your investments are going to go and where your philanthropy is going to go. And that's why we're encouraging you to consider the Royal Alexandra Hospital Foundation. 125 years they're celebrating this year. You can check out the website givetoroyalalex.org to make a commitment to help sustain and grow the hospital we call the Royal Alex. That's the Royal Alexandra Hospital into its next 125 years. Maybe it's in honor of someone that you love. You'll love them forever, and there's a connection to the Royal Alex. Maybe your life was saved at the Royal Alex. Maybe you welcomed your babies at the Royal Alex. Whatever the story is, everybody's got their echo of the Alex. You can consider a one-time gift or maybe a recurring monthly gift. If that fits into your family's plan, give generously today and be part of the Royal Alex's legacy of care at givetoroyalalex.org. All right, well, this has been one of those shows where this audience just continues to impress. We're not surprised at your level of engagement today. We're not surprised that you have a lot to say about where education funding goes in the province of Alberta. And we want to give a shout out to those of you that were chiming in from other Canadian provinces and territories as well. This conversation will continue, of course, aided in large part by the perspectives that you bring to the table. And we sincerely thank you for your participation in that. Make sure you share this episode with someone you know will benefit from it. Thanks to those of you that subscribe to our YouTube channel today. We'll do it all again tomorrow.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton, member emerita Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.